And we are live on the True Mets Talk post-game show, joined by none other than Carson from the Mets Weekly Podcast. The New York Mets get the series sweep over the New York Yankees by a score of 12-2. How are we feeling? Carson, thank you so much for joining me. I was going to have Rob on here, truthfully, before. He's out. He's not available. Carson, thank you so much for the quick pivot. I always enjoy chopping it up with you. How are we doing today? This is a tremendous night for New York baseball, especially for those guys in Queens, the New York Mets.
Oh my God. I mean, this team they continue to outdo themselves every single night. And we all know me. I'm like the pessimistic to optimistic, back and forth, always weighing out the pros and the cons. And I can tell you I'm feeling confident by the day. Let's just say that. They got to 500 now, which is, in my opinion, I think the last time I was on here, I said the first step was to get to 500. Now I'm here again. They hit 500, and hopefully they don't look back and they just continue to do it like this. And obviously they're not going to score 12 runs every single night, but we have seen very, very, and I mean very efficient offense from top to bottom, minus a few pieces. But of course, it's been very, very impressive. And not to mention, just saying this off the top of my head, the fact that we swept this series with Manaea and Peterson, both of our starting pitchers, not even getting past, like barely getting past the fifth inning, is really impressive. Also down a player with Edwin Diaz not here. I mean, they band together and they scratched out these two wins, and here they are at 500.
It is truly a next up man mentality, next man up mentality with this team. It's such an amazing thing to witness, and they are quite literally proving us all wrong. We were talking about and having conversations about this team weeks ago being sellers because they were doing absolutely poorly. We were talking about a team that was 13 games, 12 games, whatever it was, under 500, and they have rallied. They have banded back to get to 500. And I appreciate you all being here. This is an absolutely amazing time to be a New York Mets fan. The New York Yankees definitely were struggling coming into this series, but they were riding high in terms of the totality of how 2024 was going. We all know the outside noise that comes with the Subway Series, with Yankees fans, with the media, everything else in between. And it feels damn good to sweep and take two from that New York Yankees team if you're a New York Mets fan. So, Mets fans, we deserve a little bit of a round of applause for ourselves for sticking through the tough times. And quite literally, what we're witnessing right now is extraordinary. You said it. We're not expecting 12 runs every single time. 9 runs yesterday. It's 7 runs here, 6 runs there. This offense looks like an absolute juggernaut right now. That's really the only word that I can quite literally put on this offense because there's nothing else to describe the production that we've been seeing. So, like I said, we're going to talk all about this win. We're going to talk about the Subway Series and a little bit about the state of the New York Mets right now. That's kind of what I envision for this post game. Appreciate you all being in the comments section. Keep hitting your comments. Keep commenting in the live chat first and foremost. Hit that thumbs up on this stream. I appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you don't subscribe to the Mets Weekly Podcast, make sure you are subscribing to Carson, Andrew, and Frank because they do a good job. Obviously, like Carson said, shocked. If you listen to any of their content, any of Carson's content surrounding the New York Mets, it's very objective, very statistics heavy based, but this team is defying all odds right now, man. That is quite literally how I would sum it up. We are speechless. So make sure you all go ahead and hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the Mets Weekly Podcast. Okay. Shouting out a couple comments here before we get into it. Love everybody. Listen, it's almost 12 o'clock at night on a weekday. And we got heads in the chat right now supporting us and talking Mets baseball because this fan base loves this team just as much as we do. Shout out to B. Stearns, Mets knocking out other teams' top pitchers. Jeremy saying absolutely incredible. Junior saying, let's go Mets. Wow. Mets madness from Josh. Great ball play from Daniel. Oh my goodness, guys. I appreciate y'all being here. Bring that energy. This is what we love. This is what we have just been hoping for, to talk about good baseball in this 2024 season. So let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. It all starts with Sean Manaea. This pitching matchup, you see it in the thumbnail, Luis Gil versus Sean Manaea. And this pitching matchup in general in this Subway Series, with who the Yankees had going versus who the Mets had going, and Garrett Cole and Luis Gil versus David Peterson and Sean Manaea. Somehow, some way, they get through tough innings, the offense backs them up, and good things happen. So obviously, we went on the postgame last night to talk about Mr. David Peterson. We had a lengthy discussion the last time you were on this postgame, Carson, about David Peterson. We talk about him constantly. That is the guy that we talk about constantly. But we also talk about Sean Manaea because he has, in my opinion, some of the same struggles in terms of the put-away pitches and the efficiency landscape of his arsenal in putting hitters away. What did you notice tonight about Sean Manaea in that 5 innings before the rain delay? And this is a weird game. Let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
This was a weird game for the New York Mets because of that rain delay. Danny Young gets the ball after the rain delay, but Sean Manaea did an absolutely phenomenal job. I say it time and time again, Carson, and I know you can probably attest to this. We don't expect Sean Manaea to go 6+ innings ever. 5 innings is probably the max. Did he impress you tonight, or do you need to see more?
I mean, I've always been a fan of Sean Manaea. I've always liked his stuff from the left slot. He's always been one of those rare strikeout lefties throughout his entire career. Not as many strikeouts this year as compared to what I was expecting, but with Sean Manaea, I think coming from more of the negative or constructive side, I think that we're leaning a lot further towards pushing Sean Manaea to the bullpen at this point, just not being able to get this length out of him. 5 innings, of course, is great. But of course, with that short bullpen as of right now, I wouldn't mind if they pushed him to the bullpen. I understand the value and everything, but with Manaea, I'd say that, it would have looked a lot worse if Alex Verdugo was not a double play machine. I mean, that's the Verdugo special, as I like to call it. Just constantly pounding the ball into the dirt. But I think that overall with Manaea, it comes down to just pretty much the same thing about David Peterson, is basically just making these competitive pitches. And we really do see a lot of Manaea not necessarily overthrowing, but just kind of missing his window and kind of just missing the zone just entirely. And you see fastballs and sliders dancing all over the zone. And, to one way, you think that maybe it has an advantage because you don't know where the ball is going to be going. But in terms of when he has to, actually tunnel this stuff, he gets into some trouble, and it can be a little bit stressful. I think that he kind of worked around the Soto and Judge. I think it's pretty evident that it's very top heavy, this lineup. Minus the Soto and Judge. Volpe's having a solid season, but everybody else, it's kind of just been the hit or miss. Glaber's been struggling. They're without Stanton and without Rizzo as well. So, the lineup isn't as deep. So right now, as you look at it, it made sense to obviously pitch around those two big boppers, of course. What's up, Subway Shay? But, I think when you look at it in totality, he gave you the 5 innings. I said that if he does not get past the 5th inning, I was not confident in them winning this game. I said that on Twitter clearly. But the offense just said, you know what? Screw you. and let's just score 12 runs and not even put any stress on anybody, because at this point you left not much margin for error towards the beginning of the season for a lot of these starting pitchers. Right now, you're seeing the offense just really, really pick up, and these short end performances where they're not going the distance kind of get swept under the rug. So overall, I think Manaea did his job, did what he could against a Yankees lineup that goes through Judge and Soto. I was impressed to see them just win these two games with not getting any real distance from their starting pitchers. And I think that it's just seeing a team just back up a teammate, and that's really just how they've done it as a collective unit.
And that's what this team is right now. Let's not get it twisted. This is a collective unit, right? I always talk about these starting pitchers for the New York Mets. And listen, before I get into that, shout out to my guy Ant from the Subway to Shea podcast. Start spreading the damn news. The Mets get the sweep. We're trolling a little bit tonight. You know what? We've had it. Start spreading the news. The Mets are sweeping today. Always appreciate you, Ant, bringing the energy. Subscribe, first and foremost, to the Subway to Shea podcast. This feels damn good. Mets fans, collectively, we're allowed to celebrate this series sweep. Anyways, we'll talk about that in just a second, because I got a whole other can of worms to open up with that. But listen, Sean Manaea is a guy. Tyler McGill is a guy. I know Tyler McGill is your guy. David Peterson's another guy that I quite simply cannot expect longevity from consistently from those starting pitchers. But it doesn't quite matter. And we'll talk about the offense. We'll talk about Francisco Alvarez, because we have a couple other slides here to talk about. We'll talk about all the run production that this offense is producing for these starting pitchers. But all I ask from a guy like Sean Manaea, especially tonight, knowing that the rain is going to come in somewhere in the middle of the game. We didn't know when it was going to be a factor. We didn't know when the delay was going to happen, but we just asked Sean Manaea to go out there and provide a competitive start. And that's what these guys have been doing. Whether it's Sean Manaea tonight, whether it's David Peterson, who was only able to go 4 1/3 inning last night in a 9-7 ball game of victory. I like it, man. Of course, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for more put-away pitches, more electricity, more longevity in these starts. But they are keeping this team in the ball game, and the offense is turning around and doing their due diligence. And I agree with you. This Yankees lineup is definitely top-heavy. Outside of a Volpe, Judge, Soto, you can pitch around those guys. Aaron Judge had what, collectively like 8 RBIs in the totality of the series. He was the answer for their only 2 runs tonight. When you have a lineup like that you're facing, you have the capability to work around those guys and get to the other guys and get those outs. And that's exactly what this Mets staff and this bullpen did this series. And I love it. And I'm not sure about you all, Daniel, in the comments section, we are 100% giving Adrian Houser his props today on this stream. I am not coming off of this stream without talking about Adrian Houser. It's not happening, because all the conversations that we had surrounding Adrian Houser in the starting rotation versus what he's produced so far in the bullpen since he's moved there has been night and day different. And he has been that glue piece, the glue to a taxed Mets bullpen. And I caught some flack on my X account by stating the fact that this bullpen is taxed. Whether you want to say it's not, going into the off day, I don't care. This bullpen is taxed. Edwin Diaz, the suspension alone created a lot of rifts in his bullpen in terms of the outlook going over the next 10 games. Now, having used Daniel Nunes for 2+ innings in the first game, having used Reed Garrett to end the game, who do you pivot to? Danny Young got out of the jam, right? He gave up that home run, but he got out of the inning. Adam Ottavino was able to skirt his way around, and Adam Ottavino is a guy that we both know, you and I, Carson, probably should not still be on this team. And we both were wondering what the Mets were doing in bringing him back. But he got out of the jam after that Vientos error. And to cap it all off, Adrian Houser comes up with the mop duty and a laugher of a game, 12-2, 3 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk. What do we have to say? It's simply next man up mentality. Talk to me, Carson. What do you think?
I mean, to be honest, I was really, really frightened going into this game. Like I said, I was really concerned in terms of the length of the starting rotation. And, because I remember they used a lot of relievers last night, of course, because they did not get much distance from David Peterson. And it seemed like the only guy that was available going into this game was Drew Smith off of actual rest. Drew Smith goes to the IL, and then we're like, okay, who is actually available this game? Obviously, back-to-back days. A lot of guys can pitch the back-to-back days. They have an off day tomorrow. They have that rest, whatever. But, you still do have that concern of effectiveness with a lot of these relievers, and they were able to hold it down. Adrian Houser's been, lights out in the bullpen. I mean, he's really been able to just, basically just reinvent himself on the fly. And, he's really just been very, a lot more, just making a lot better pitches, being able to locate the sinker properly. He's not walking anyone anymore. He's throwing harder as well. Just overall, the quality of what you're seeing from Houser, he just has a lot less stress on him. He has a lot less of a workload on him, and maybe that's just basically what he needed. And we all know that David Stearns has a huge connection to Adrian Houser. I'm pretty sure he's now traded for him twice in his career as an executive. He knew him when he was part of Houston and Milwaukee, now with the Mets. So I think that, he knew that Houser still had it, but he just kind of needed to make those little adjustments to get there. And the adjustment was to move him to the bullpen, and he's been great. And he's been pretty much saving a lot of what has been going on in this bullpen that's been really taxed from the starting rotation not being able to go distance. And, just overall, I think it's just been impressive to see someone be able to just give you multiple innings out of that bullpen, because they have a lot of guys in here who they're only good for 1 inning. Maybe you can stretch him to 1 up-down with an off day. But overall, you don't have anybody in this bullpen that can go the distance. That's why I prefer them to move either it's McGill or Minaya to the bullpen to give you multiple innings. But, right now, your bullpen's taxed, and, Houser stepped up. A lot of guys stepped up, and they were able to piece together these wins. Very impressive.
100%. Very impressive. Nothing more, nothing less. Patty is saying, Carson, with a question mark and an exclamation point. Yes, Carson is the second. This is the second time Carson's appeared on a True Mets Talk postgame show. You will be, and this will be a duo for postgame shows in the future, I suppose, because it's done very well. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I love these conversations with you, Carson, because we always go back and forth in terms of not only the pitching, but the offense especially. And we'll talk about the offense, right? That's like the meat and the bones of this Mets team right now. We'll go back and forth on it because guess what? I have a bone to pick with you on this post-game show about some of the production. We'll get into it. It'll be friendly banter, but we'll get into it. I want to shout out everybody in the chat. Like I said, some great comments coming our way. Patty's saying, how could this bullpen not be taxed? That's what I was asking when people were coming after me. Even before the Drew Smith news dropped, I was like, listen, I'm not convinced. Patty, you are a testament to this. On the last stream that I did, after the Cubs series, I was asking, do we have any updates on Drew Smith? Because he clearly wasn't looking right. So hold that thought real quick because we'll talk about Drew Smith. Hold that thought. I do have a slide on him. and saying Daniel Nunes and Adrian Hauser are going to be huge for this stretch. They have both pitched well out of the pen, and they both can give this Mets team multiple innings. And I really do think that's a conversation that we should have in terms of what Daniel Nunes' role should be for this pen moving forward. I love that he's able to provide this team multiple innings, and that's what they need of him right now. But I would also love to create that flexibility in the bullpen for him to be a one inning type of guy. Perhaps maybe even that eighth inning setup guy that we have desperately lacked so far with that Brooks Raley season ending elbow injury. That's something that he can definitely probably become comfortable in, especially when Edwin Diaz is back. Now, like I said, during this stretch when Edwin Diaz is out, the ball game changes. You need multiple guys in multiple different roles, and Daniel Nunes is going to have to give you length. But I really do think with his stuff, he's a potential candidate to just take that setup role. Adam Ottavino certainly isn't that. Drew Smith probably isn't going to be that. Reed Garrett is kind of phasing out from that guy in terms of being that setup guy. So I really do think Daniel Nunes, when the time comes, when Edwin Diaz is back and this bullpen finds some stability, however that case may be, and however the Mets come to that conclusion, I really would like Daniel Nunes to be that one inning, eighth inning stop guy for this team. Any objections to that, I guess I'd have to ask?
I don't have any objections. I think that Daniel Nunes has easily earned a spot in this bullpen for, just weeks and months and maybe even years to come. I mean, this guy coming out of nowhere, 28 years old, entering that reliever prime. It's been really a tough journey for him, and he finally got here. I mean, when you're rocking a fastball that's got like it's like 17 inches of induced vertical break, and then vertical approach angle hovering around 4. I mean, that is something you can really build on, and that is like elite level stuff. And for those of you who think I just gave you like a Netflix password, I swear I didn't. But I'm just saying that Nunes is just quite. I mean, this guy is a live arm. I mean, this is a live arm you're talking about here, and this is someone who can get you whiffs at will. Let's just say that, and it's not going to stop because this guy is. If you're going to be looking at these expected numbers, this guy's in the 99th percentile of these expected whiff numbers and chase numbers. I mean, this guy is on fire right now. Probably one of the best relievers in baseball this year. And he's been just so effective. And I'm really surprised that he has been because we've used him and relied on him a lot. And I said this last night on Twitter. I said, please don't kill Nunes. Don't kill this guy. And don't put him in these multiple inning situations so much. Don't run him out there, and don't overuse him. I'd like to see him in a solidified role. It doesn't seem like he has one yet, but I think we're getting pretty close very soon where, if he continues to pitch like this at the volume he's going, at the rate that he's going, I mean, this is 7th or 8th inning guy right here you're sliding in. Nobody expected that, obviously. They expected maybe Jorge Lopez to do that. Adam Ottavino at his best to do that. That didn't happen. Jake Diekman has high leverage experience, but Daniel Nunes, he's on the upswing. He's on the uptrend, and I think, he has been just a breath of fresh air. I mean, I remember seeing him in spring training, and, it was good stuff, but like he just wasn't able to apply it a little bit. And now he's just been able to refine it now, and the guy doesn't walk anyone. When you're throwing that hard, when you are throwing that incredible pitch shape and you don't walk anyone, you have quite, and I mean quite, a value to a high leverage part of a bullpen. And I think that's where he's aiming right now. And I can't wait to see him in that role because he's thrived at everything that we've pushed at him. And it's been a lot we have pushed to him.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that guy will be a key piece to this bullpen when Edwin Diaz comes back. And let's face it, this bullpen needs a lot right now. And Daniel Nunes is stepping up to the task. You hope that Adam Ottavino can replicate something at this point in time to what he produced tonight. And like I said, we both know that his future is in limbo with the Mets if he continues to produce what he's produced over the longevity of 2024. But the Mets are looking for any sort of production out of this bullpen. And quite simple, Daniel Nunes has, risen to the task. There's no questions about that. Stevie Mack saying, still not enough. Keep winning. Make us fully believe. And Gerald is saying 500 baseball, baby. Absolutely. This is where we wanted the Mets to get to. A lot of people are saying slow your roll during this hot stretch. Let this team get themselves back to 500. Well, guess what, folks? They are back to 500 baseball. And you just hope that the next time out, they get to above 500 for the first time in what seems like forever in this season. And I see you, Carson. You're shaking your head, and I'm shaking my head too, because this has been a season seemingly of ups and downs so far. And we're just waiting for that stretch of consistency to get this team back into the place that we know they can be. And it seems like that time is right now. So let's talk a little bit about the aforementioned Drew Smith, because he did go on the IL today. And I have a couple of gripes with this. I do. This was a very weird situation to me. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm trying to make sense of this all. And I figured that before we get into the offense and talk about probably the meat and bones of this stream, we have to ask what happened to Drew Smith. We understand Edwin Diaz got ejected for the foreign substance, the sticky substance in that game 3 of the Cubs series. We know that Drew Smith came in to relieve him, and he got 2 outs. Somewhere in between those 2 outs, he was holding his hand, and then he had to leave the ball game prematurely because he just simply didn't look right. Couple days go by. We hear nothing about Drew Smith. Oh, he's okay. We'll see him. We'll see him probably tonight. Until the Mets dropped the bombshell that he went through, I guess I should say, MRI imaging on his forearm. So this was a guy that clearly didn't look right. You know that you have a wasted roster spot with Edwin Diaz and losing him for 10 games. You need all the bullpen arms you can get in terms of the availability. I guess the Mets were holding out hope that Drew Smith would be available until they just simply understood that they can't bank on that anymore. Because it's like you have what we saw in Chicago. You would think that the imaging would be done ASAP, because this is a roster spot that needs to go to somebody that can actually go out there and perform. And if you have any inkling of an idea that Drew Smith can't perform, you would think that this would happen much, much sooner, before this Subway Series, or maybe after game 1 to bring up an arm that could potentially appear in this game. So I'm just curious, right? We know Drew Smith has been up and down. We always talk about the stuff that he possesses. Carson, you always talk about Drew Smith's inability to be an efficient pitcher and what we have all aimed for out of him over the last couple of years. Grooving fastballs belt high, inside, hitters being able to turn around on his pitches and pull them for timely home runs. What do you make of this situation? I'm curious, because in the podcast episode that I dropped 2 days ago, this was the first option that I had envisioned in terms of bringing up a bullpen arm. It doesn't matter if it's your guy Wilkin Ramos. It doesn't matter if it's my guy Jose Butto. Some guy that's going to pitch for the New York Mets and be available during Edwin Diaz's suspension. And Drew Smith clearly wasn't that in the Subway Series. Now, it didn't harm them because they swept this series. But you can imagine if they got into a situation where it was a close ball game, perhaps today, and you didn't have that pen arm to rely on. And this is where you got to give props to Adrian Hauser and just say, thank goodness we have that guy going 3 innings out of the bullpen, right? It's like full circle moment. Holy cow. What do you make of this situation? I thought it was interesting, and I figured that we'd get your perspective on this because I was sitting there and scratching my head because it was a no-brainer to me thinking that, listen, he didn't look right. We need a bullpen arm. And if he's not right, he's going on the IL. So what do you think about that?
I mean, this is the proper conversation for my co-host Frank because he's been killing it with this entire story of how the Mets have been handling injuries in the last few weeks and of how inconsistent it has been. Now, I think everybody knows how much of a big fan I am of Drew Smith and how much I push for him as a as a pitcher, and how I think he is so unbelievably talented, and he can contribute to any World Series team known to man. But this was very odd because I think everybody saw that he was kind of like holding his hand, he was holding his wrist, something like that was happening. He didn't look right, obviously, in that Cubs game, of course, with Edwin Diaz being tossed out. It was a crazy circumstance, of course, crazy ninth inning. But then you also just see how he has an elbow strain here. And of course, we know the elbow, we know that surgery that always will link up to it, that is kind of being, can be floated around. So I'm kind of wondering as to where, was his availability expected, or was his availability already was it already written on the wall? Like, I think they already saw it as, he doesn't look right, but he's going to be pitching through this type of injury. And did it make it worse when he gave up that hit in the ninth in Chicago? I kind of wonder what the process was in between that. It's kind of interesting. I think we can always date this back to kind of like what Trevor May would say a lot, of relievers pitching through a lot of little tweaks or whatever. But an elbow strain, an elbow, sore elbow, an elbow strain is close to a tear. Like, that's close to like a partially torn UCL. I'm not a doctor again, but I did see Tim Healy talking about like how it's very similar to maybe it's partially torn, to maybe it is fully torn. They still don't know what the deal is with Drew Smith now. All they know is that he is going to be out for at least the 15 days where he's not going to be pitching or throwing or doing anything. So it's very, very weird, especially the way that they've kind of handled this. I don't know, again, with a lot of the relievers, it's been more of the pitching injuries. It's a very injured position. It's the most injured position in all of sports now. But we talked about this on our podcast just very deeply about kind of, Jeremy Hefner not really being able to notice a lot of the mental game and the physical game. He's more of just the hands-on of which numbers kind of fit into which numbers and, which situation does this and, trying to pitch tunnel and trying to pitch and make these great pitches that he kind of forgets those little elements that are happening in front of him. And listen, I'm the big numbers guy. I will always be the numbers guy, but there always will be the mental game to it. There always will be the physical game to it. It will be full on, put on flames now with how pitchers get injured these days. And for some reason, with Sean Reed-Foley, it was a little bit weird. With Drew Smith, it was a little bit weird. How they've handled Marte has been a little bit weird. It's a different story. But I think yes, it's very odd, and I wish I had some answers for it. And hopefully they do get to the bottom of to where they can kind of find this median where these just pitchers can get this type of rest. It's really hard when you're put in this situation where the bullpen's just been taxed forever. But, we all know my feelings about Drew Smith. I don't wish any harm to the guy. I'm just saying it's like, we need to have more conclusive answers about this, especially with how more advanced we can be with a lot of this technology, as the kids would say. So when you look at Drew Smith, of course, he's had these injury problems in the past. He's had these inconsistencies. It's been quite a road for Drew Smith. And, it's quite a road for these pitchers. They get injured. Some nights they have it, some nights they don't. Looking at it from another perspective of, besides my point of Drew Smith, there's definitely been some weirdness, let's just say that, with a lot of the relievers, a lot of the pitchers. The starting rotation has been relatively healthy outside of Senga going down at the beginning. With the bullpen, we have seen some circumstances of injury, circumstances of just being DFA'd, throwing your glove in the crowd. We've gone through quite a few arms, and it's only 3 months into the season. So it's concerning. You hope that they can figure it out. But right now you're looking at, you lost Raley, you lost Lopez. Ottavino does not look like a trusted source out of that bullpen. Drew Smith is out. Sean Reed-Foley's out. Somebody that we thought could be a key piece to this bullpen in Shintaro Fujinami has not gotten right and also got injured. So right now you're going short, but of course you do have this pitching depth, and it's been a lot better. It's been the next man up. They have been able to provide. And obviously, Ottavino, stay tuned for that, because we're going to talk about that on my show tomorrow. We're going to go deep into what's going on with Adam Ottavino, because that is a whole other story. But with Drew Smith, it seemed like he was the only option that was available completely. It was weird that the timeline was very slow and a very weird pace. But for some reason, I guess life goes on. You go through these arms, and you'll continue to go through these arms, and they get hurt, they get hurt. I'm hoping that there's some arms in here that stay healthy because we need them. We're running on fumes here, but they've still been able to figure it out. Drew Smith, it's a loss to the bullpen. I personally don't think it's a big loss. Different story, but definitely been a key part to this bullpen for a while. So again, they're just trying to piece this thing together. And Drew Smith is one of those examples of that. And now he goes to the IL.
That's really all you can do at this point, right? When you piece things together. And we saw the corresponding move. I believe Mr. Adcock was the one that was brought up in place of Drew Smith. I'm looking for other guys down in the minor leagues to make more contributions than Adcock on this team. And like I said, I don't know what the corresponding moves are going to be tomorrow. I'm sure we'll see another move waiting in the wings with the off day commencing before this Astro series starts. But I figured we might as well have a conversation surrounding this situation because, like Frank says, and he said it in the chat, and more power to him, because I'm wondering the same thing. It's like, you know that you're losing a roster spot in general with Edwin Diaz, and you're not able to replace that. If you know a guy can't perform and be out there for the next couple of days, you're talking about a 10-day stretch. If he's not available for even 3 of those games, you might as well just IL him, because you just need that extra arm. But I digress. I figured this would be a good conversation. We'll see what the Mets bullpen does. We'll see what the Mets do for the bullpen, I should say. And we'll leave it at that. Drew Smith to the IL. We won't see him for a little bit. Don't know who's going to come up. I don't know what other corresponding moves are going to happen, but all I do know is we're talking about a series sweep against the New York Yankees 12-2. We are here live in the flesh on YouTube. If you're on X, come over to the YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button on the stream. We definitely appreciate it. Subscribe to the Mets Weekly Podcast, as always, where you get all your latest Mets news and happenings 24/7. I'm not going to say 365 because that's a stretch, talking Mets baseball every single day of the year. But you know what I mean. subscribe to them. Subscribe to the CP New York Sports YouTube channel. Always talking Mets baseball. And yeah, I'm ecstatic, man. I'm ecstatic. Let's talk about the meat and bones of this podcast. Let's talk about the meat and bones of this stream. This offense has been on one. It doesn't matter if Shota Imanaga's on the mound, Dylan Cease, Luis Heel, Garrett Cole. You can throw your best. This Mets lineup is going to produce runs. This has been night and day different with the conversations that we've been having surrounding this lineup probably just 3 weeks ago. Wow, what a turnaround for these guys. And it's been every single guy, maybe with the exception of Jeff McNeil here and there, although he did have 2 hits last night. Whatever. Props to him. Glad to see him get a couple hits. Let's clap it up just a little bit. But everybody else in between. You have to start with Francisco Alvarez tonight, man. You have to. What more does this kid have to do to let Mets fans know that he is invaluable? Like, you can't replace this guy. Wow. With how young he is and the outlook of the production that he's already producing. Carson, I know you're a big Francisco Alvarez guy, but just talk to me about this guy's production so far ever since coming off the IL.
I mean, one thing that I've always had the concern of with him has been the quality of contact. I think that he leaves a lot of pitches that he could crush into oblivion. But so far, it's been really good. I've been seeing a lot more of him just buckling down, being able to have good pitch selection as well. And I've seen that from Vientos too, but also just Alvarez overall. I mean, he just looks like, behind the plate, he looks like the major leaguer. He looks like a 10-year veteran. At the plate, since he's come back, I mean, he looks like a major league hitter. He looks like a full-on major league hitter who is not completely refurbished because he's only 22 years old. He can always get better, and there's always the flaws. But, I mean, overall, he's just been able to buckle down in these situations, be able to drive in runs, the situational hitting, which, I mean, it seems like the young guys and some of the guys from the bottom of the lineup do that better than a lot of the guys at the top of the lineup sometimes. But, I mean, he's just someone who gives you the full-on impact. And whether he's struggling at the plate, I mean, he's just going to give it to you no matter what. And that is just someone who we are really, really we are really, really blessed to have, of someone who just gives you that 100% no matter what. And the fact that he's only 22 years old, it's incredible. And I think, the sky's the limit for this kid. I'm not, putting his hat in the MVP race yet, but I think that when you look at it, just the automatic just wave of how this team performs with him in the lineup, it's a difference maker. The guy is just an X factor to this team. And it's been really hard seeing a lot of these catchers who have not been good for the Mets. And now you finally have someone quarterback in everything, running everything, being his attitude being as contagious as it can be. It just has been refreshing. It really is refreshing, especially when you've seen the awful Mets catchers that I've seen in my day. I sound like I'm 80 years old. I'm 22. But when you look at it, from just what he provides for this lineup, it is just, you can't list everything. It's just such a big impact that he provides. The fact that he does that at 22 years old, incredible, just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no sort of value you can put on Francisco Alvarez in terms of what he has provided. Daniel saying it in the chat, 11-3 since Alvarez has been back. His ability to command the actual battery unit with the starting pitchers, stealing strikes, calling a game. Like, these types of things where you see last night with David Peterson on the mound, him basically saying, let's hurry it up a little bit because the clock's winding down, and he has that in his peripherals, right, as the catcher looking out into the outfield. these are things that, and we've seen it countless of times, whether it's last season or early this season, in terms of taking timeouts and going to the mound last second before a pitch clock violation is called. There's so many things that you can point out about Francisco Alvarez that doesn't directly correlate into the box score. But you see here tonight, the box score definitely showed up. Opposite field home run, opposite field double, couple RBIs mixed in between. Listen, Carson, I know you love opposite field. Let's talk about it right now.
I mean, they want to play like a bunch of losers, but, it's
field.
Whatever, The runs are the runs, it happens, Not everybody can be perfect. I get it. It's all right, We're here for efficiency. We're not here for perfection. Right. All right?
Right. For those of you all who don't know, Carson and I will always go back and forth between pull side hitting versus all fields hitting that I love. And I'm never saying that Carson is not telling everybody that the opposite field is bad 100% of the time. I don't think that's your point ever, right? Unless I'm wrong.
No.
That's not your point. Yeah. And I know that a lot of
Absolutely
people will misconstrue that. And I like to have fun with you because I think that whenever we talk about that, like that's how I kind of shake it, because I'm like, I understand your point, right? I hear exactly what you're saying. And I do agree with you deep down that the pull side is the most efficient way to go. But I always got to have fun with you, man. Whenever someone hits a great hit, Vientos, Alvarez, doesn't matter who, to the opposite side.
Every little league coach, every little league coach that tells you to use the field, to get on top of the ball, they drill it into our skulls. It will always be like that. That's how it is. I think
is how it is.
Yeah. But there's always a right way to play the game. There's always the right way. I don't know how long this is going to last, but they've been able to do something that I've really continued to see the Mets not do for a long time, is pitch recognition and pitch selection. We've seen them swing at first pitches when they're actually down the plate. They actually take the opportunity to hit a pitch when they get the opportunity. And it's basically, with me, everybody says see ball, hit ball. I'm more see ball, hit the living crap out of the ball. But, it's a different kind of look at it, as to where it's just a more efficient approach to swing at things in the strike zone. I know it's crazy. The Mets, maybe at one point, it took a while for them to come around, but staring at strikes, nothing's going to happen if you stare at it. Nothing's going to happen. Just the count's going to move. So you're going to have to swing at things in the strike zone. You're not going to have to chase. And that's what they've been able to do. They've been able to see the pitch and hit the pitch. That's what I've liked to see them do. Obviously, we've seen a lot more power, of course, that more being development of the stage of JD Martinez getting into the lineup, Vientos trying to finally finding his stroke and looking like the big league hitter that we know he can be when he gets the consistent playing time. Francisco Alvarez, we all know there's pop in that bat no matter what. You're starting to see that kind of come together, and that's really just been very, very encouraging to see them actually take efficient ABs, because there's been stretches, even this season, where I'm seeing them stare at the first two strikes, chasing a breaking ball in the other batter's box, or I'm just seeing them try to hunt for a walk, which is not a way to do it. Unless you're a stolen base threat, I don't want to see you hunting for walks. Unless the guy has absolutely no control whatsoever, I don't need to see you getting to the 3-ball count, unless you're going to steal some bases and manufacture runs for me. They've been more aggressive. They've been more efficient. They have been overall more timely hitting. And that has been what has been developing when you have good pitch selection and good pitch recognition. So I've been good with that. Do I want to see even more power? Do I want to see everybody be a 20 home run threat? Absolutely. Is that the way you're going to outslug some of these teams? Yes. But at the end of the day, they don't just have the top-heavy stars that they had a few a few years ago. This is a 9-man deep team. You take Jeff McNeil out of here, it's a 9-man man team. So it's just overall, they play for each other, like we've said it, and they just feed off of each other, and that is all you can really ask for. And we got to see a few pulled fly balls at the end there, which is good. I'm glad to see that that's a concept. But, I mean, you also just kind of see, when I say, the pull fly balls kind of thing, it's more of just maximizing that ability. Obviously, Vientos, he can have power to all fields no matter what. That's the top 1% raw power you're talking about. The same thing goes for Ronnie Mauricio whenever he comes back. I don't know how long that's going to be until we, adjust to that skill. Pete Alonso obviously has the raw power as well. Martinez, we all know he likes to just spread. If that guy puts the ball in the air, he's going to produce. I mean, that's just how JD Martinez has been his entire career. But then there's these guys like Bader who don't have the amazing raw power. There's those guys like Taylor who don't have the amazing raw power. Jeff McNeil just stinks. But when you look at, Brandon Nimmo or Francisco Lindor, when you pull fly balls, it turns a good hitter into a great hitter, turns a great hitter into an elite hitter. So that's what I look at it as, maximizing that talent. And right now they have a lot of guys with raw power, of course. I'd like to see a little bit more, but we're seeing the extra base hits coming, and it's all come together as a unit. I mean, all these guys have gotten hot for each other, and they've all gotten hot together, and I'm hoping that they stay hot. That's all we can hope for. I mean, not as hot to just score 12 runs every single game, which is not going to happen, but never say never, I guess, because we've been beating up some of the best pitchers in baseball recently. So who knows? You never know.
You never know. I guess you'll never know with this Mets team, as Kanye says. I mean, two guys in Tyrone Taylor and Harrison Bader tonight going deep. I mean, this team collectively, like you said, just top to bottom is absolutely producing. There's no words to describe. Not even if you came into the season expecting 1 through 9 to just be performing the way they are right now, maybe with the exception of Jeff McNeil, you'd be lying to yourself. A lot of people acknowledge that this was supposed to be a top-heavy lineup. And for the first half of the season, it was the bottom of the lineup producing. Then the top of the lineup started to slowly carry that sort of, I guess, pressure on their backs. And now it's a collective total team effort. What I will say, though, is, first of all, I got to address Darren Rivera here in the chat, because he's on your guy right now. And we had this conversation surrounding the bullpen about Wilkin Ramos, right? Just recently, I believe, in AAA, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe just over 3 innings pitched in AAA. Yeah. You were clamoring for him to get that opportunity if the Mets made that corresponding move. He's been performing well. He lit it up in AA, so he is in AAA. I just don't see the Mets promoting such a new guy in AAA to the major leagues that quickly. So yes, Darren, 100%. Wilkin Ramos is a stud. I just want to see that because I saw the conversation going back and forth. But no, you're absolutely right. This is why it's such a blessing to have Carson on this podcast, because a lot of Mets fans and a lot of baseball fans in general that I talk to, and I played the game for so long that I know my preferences when I go up there at the plate to hit, right? And it's usually against better pitchers where you find that the put away pitches are really freaking good, especially if they have movement on it. So why put yourself in that position to get down 0-2, 0-1 even, and put yourself and set yourself up for right where the pitcher wants you? Why wouldn't you, if you get strikes early in the count, not jump on it and just get base knocks? Because, I mean, is anybody going to go against the approach of how this Mets team has knocked these best pitchers out of the ball game the last couple of weeks? They're jumping on first pitches. They're jumping on 1-0 pitches. It's not a secret, guys. I really hope everyone realizes this because I've been preaching this all season
And
long.
that's
As a
and that's what
hitter,
I couldn't stand about the Eric Chavez in 2022 with the let's get the
yes,
pitch count up, let's get in the guy's head. Like, you're just waiting for things to happen for you. Make it happen. You get the pitch in front of you, beat the living crap out of it. Like, it just, I don't know. I just feel like it's just a slow way. It's a slow walk to death, in my opinion, when you do that. It's crazy.
and we're not saying, I don't think either of us are saying the fact that working counts is a bad thing in certain situations, and
Yeah,
certain
of
guys have
course.
the ability to do that better than others. But when you look at the efficiency in terms of the last couple of weeks with guys having success early in the count and swinging at strikes early in the count, there's no denying that. Listen, I don't care. I care about the process and the end result follows after. If someone pops out on a pitch that they deem is their pitch and they just happen to miss it and pop out early in the count, a lot of people are going to jump to say, listen, why is he swinging on a 1-0 fastball? Why not watch and work the count? Like, it's the process and not the end result. Next time at bat, if they throw him that pitch, whoever the batter is, I'd expect that to be in the gap because that's a learning experience for you. And these hitters, you have to realize that they don't want to get into pitchers' counts. What do pitchers want to do? Get the first, presumably, this is an old school type of baseball saying. I know the game has changed a lot depending on the type of hitter, but they want to get the first fastball over for a strike to get ahead in the count. Why not get ahead of the pitcher and just swing at that strike if it's in the zone and just catch him off guard and hit a double in the gap? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I could probably go on this topic all day long. I've always preached that and I never understood what the opposition to that was. Just because the Mets were popping out on a lot of 0-0 pitches, 1-0 pitches, whatever, that was the end result. But if a hitter tells me that they like a certain pitch early in the count, swing at the damn pitch. I'd much prefer that
Yeah,
than getting down
absolutely.
0-2. I think we're both in agreement here, Carson. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
but the thing is, a lot of people like the notion of working pitchers counts, and I don't fault them for it because we see Brandon Nimmo, hell, we see Francisco Lindor do this sometimes now, even in the leadoff spot when he moved there. Like, that's not out of the ordinary. There are certain guys that can do that and still be successful and not feel that pressure when they're down 0-2, 1-2, and the ability to not expand the strike zone. But what we've seen with this Mets offense in the last 2-3 weeks, why would you not be encouraging them to swing early in the count? It wouldn't make sense because that's what their success has been.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it from working the count, I mean, it's just with the working the pitch count and giving these competitive ABs, it's like, you know, and the same thing I go back to in 2022 of like that offense where it just it drives me nuts, where it's like, let's foul off these balls in the strike zone. Let's keep making as much contact as we possibly can to tire out this pitcher. It makes absolutely no sense to me because if you have this opportunity, stop being in this emergency hack mode over and over and over again. If you see something in the zone, you have the good pitch recognition. If you can pick it up, swing at it. And for some reason, they don't do that a lot. They've been doing it recently, and I'm glad to see them doing that. I think that there's a lot of overthinking when it comes to where the Mets kind of like to plan ahead in these plate appearances, and for some reason, they just I don't know why they do this, but they need to look at two strikes for some reason to get comfortable. And it should be the exact opposite. And I don't understand why they do that. It makes absolutely no sense. But they have been doing it recently, and they have been attacking. And I think that that's really something that they really have emphasized recently. And if it is from the great man Eric Chavez, sure. But I'm just saying, like, swing at strikes. That's all I ask. It's all about that process as to where, as long as you're swinging at things in the zone, whether you whiff or not, as long as you're not chasing, as long as you're giving yourself the opportunity to put the barrel to the bat, swing at the pitch in the zone. Not to mention the ones that hunt for walks, things that are close, argue with the umpire that are borderline, swing the bat. Like I say with the whole pulled argument of like the outside pitch or going the other way or whatever, like the plate is not 5,000 feet wide. So you can put your bat on the ball if it's just on the edge of the strike zone. That's what guys with good pitch recognition and pitch selection have. And we've seen that happen so far. And with translated throughout the entire offense, where another point that I can just throw out there, where your biggest bat in Pete Alonso hasn't been Pete Alonso. And you're still getting results like this.
I mean, that's really all I would probably have to say about this offense. I mean, we can analyze it 10,000 different ways. These guys are coming up each and every at bat, and they seem locked in. And at the end of the day, as a fan, that's all I can really hope for. These guys are locked in. I don't care if it's Grimace that everyone is claiming on to, and I know that you can't stand. I don't care if it's the OMG song by Candelita.
Yeah.
I don't care. Jose Iglesias can have banded this team together and been like, all right, we're taking better at bats now. It doesn't matter what the hell the reason behind this is they're taking good at bats. They're just simply taking good at bats. That's it. And I really don't think that there's like needs to be any other further analysis on that. But what I will say though, before we close out the post game, is how good does it feel to beat the freaking Yankees twice in a row? I don't care. In coming into the Subway Series, I was asking for a split. I really was, because this is how every single Subway Series goes in recent memory. Doesn't matter how bad the Mets are. Doesn't matter how good the Yankees are, or vice versa. It always seems like it's a split. You have the WFAN guys. You know who it is. We know who it is, leading the charge in terms of the Yankees fans coming to Citi Field. And this is something that it honestly is just like, I was going to let it go because this is just another series at the end of the day. And we'd much rather beat up on the teams like the Chicago Cubs, the Washington Nationals who are coming up, the teams that are directly in line, right, with the Mets for this wild card race. And the Mets showed that by throwing Luis Severino against the Chicago Cubs. But when you have all the outside noise of these Yankees fans who did, I guess, a good job packing Citi Field and making their presence known. It was a great job. A lot of snippets, a lot of parking lot snippets that were out there about Yankees fans taking over. This feels good, man. Send them packing. I don't care to watch a lick of Yankees baseball outside of the Subway Series. I'm not going to even lie to you. Even if they're on national TV, if it's not against the Mets, I'm not watching. I don't care. I simply don't care. They're doing what they're doing in the AL. The Mets are doing what they're doing in the NL. That's the bottom line. This feels really good because there's double standards at play here. And you can talk about it or you can't talk about it. It doesn't matter, Carson. I'll open up the floor to you. But there's just the nonsense that I see that the Mets suck this. Yankees fans taking over Citi Field that. Little brother this. And then you lose 2 ball games and it's all of a sudden this is our World Series. It's like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? I don't know, man. Chime in on that before we end this.
I mean, I don't pay attention to the Yankees. I never do. I've never been one to really like trash talk as much. Like, I'm more trash talk Mets fans than Yankee fans. Like, I really don't care what they do. I've never really cared. And it has nothing to do with if I hate them or not. Because, like, yeah, like in nature, like proper nature, yeah, I don't like the Yankees. Of course, I'm a Mets fan, but I've never been one to like really care what they do. Like sometimes I just laugh off my back. Of course, we will get into the whole situation with Michael K on my show tomorrow, but
Right. Yes.
yeah. But I think that, it'll always be the back and forth. I have always been one to accept the reality that the Yankees are the superior franchise. They always have been. They're the greatest franchise in the history of sports. Great. Is it fun to maybe poke at their shortcomings sometimes because they think they're so great? Sure. Go ahead. Do I think that it's fun to do it throughout the season? Not really. I mean, the Mets annoy me more than the Yankees ever will. I mean, that'll always be that type of thing. I've always been that one fan that's been like, there's no team I love more than the Mets, and there's no team I hate more than the Mets. I mean, they drive me crazy. I mean, I'm 22 years old. I'm already going bald. That's more genetics, but I'm just saying it goes at a rapid pace. It goes at more of a rapid pace when you watch a team like the Mets that make you sweat out every single game. So I think that, it's great. The biggest shortcoming that I always usually celebrate with the Yankees is always when they lose in the playoffs. That's like the closest I usually do. During the regular season, I really don't care. I really don't care what they do. I don't care what Yankee fans say. I've never been one to really care as much. Maybe a little bit when I was younger, but now I'm like, I'm with a team that stresses me out all the time. I don't need to focus on you. Like, I mean, you guys have been in the playoffs since April. Who cares? Like, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I don't want to feed into the outside noise, but at the end of the day, I refrain myself until this game to do so because just like, I don't know, the double standards really get me. But anyways, anywho, it's great to beat the Yankees. Doesn't matter how you chop it
Oh,
up.
yeah.
A Subway Series is a Subway Series. It gets a lot of media attention. It gets the MLB more money. Let's call it for what it is. It draws eyes. Because the best city in the world, in my eyes, has two baseball teams in opposite leagues. And somehow, some way, baseball has created an environment where these two teams are considered rivals. Anywho, Mets get the sweep 12-2, game 2, and 9-7 in game 1. I'm really proud of this team, Carson. I'm not going to lie to you. When you look at the pitching matchups that came into the Subway Series for the Yankees versus the Mets, I'm really damn proud of this team. And I think everybody should be in this chat if you're a Mets fan. I'm not going to lie. I think you are too. By the judge of it, I think you're proud of this team.
I'm impressed. I really am. Because, there's trends that this team gets on. I've been like, oh, this team's pretty predictable. Like there's some outcomes that I know, but I've been really impressed. And let's just say, I mean, I've been behind, David Stearns ever since he came in here. I mean, I like David Stearns. I like what he does. Maybe Mets fans don't think it's as traditional to come into the Mets or the New York market to do what he has done so far, but I think at the end of the day, I think that, the Mendoza, I was always behind the Mendoza hire. I thought it was a great hire as well. I think that as a group, they've been good. There's always going to be the growing pains, of course. And that has been how the season has been so far. It's been up and down. And the only thing that's not going to change is that we're going to be here for the roller coaster ride no matter what. So, strap in. Hopefully it continues to be positive as compared to the negative. But I mean, when we look at this team recently, whether it's Grimace, whether it's Francisco Alvarez, whether it's, I don't know, just something got jolted into this team, whether it's JD Martinez finally coming into his full swing, it's been very, very impressive. I'm not throwing the parade yet, but you got to keep it going. Keep playing winning baseball, and you'll win baseball games. pretty simple.
Pretty simple indeed. 39-39 speaks for itself. A lot more work to do. This is not the end all be all. The Mets have to keep it pushing. A lot of work to do until this trade deadline that's coming up. I already said it on the last stream that I did. Not talking actual deadline in terms of names going or coming in until July 4th. That's my cutoff date. So, like we stated, Subway Series sweep. It's always awesome. The Mets have more work to do. I'm not satisfied. No Mets fan in this chat should be satisfied. This is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we should expect moving forward, because this was the Mets' stretch to dig themselves back out of the hole that they created themselves. Now it's time to provide that cushion. It's become an NL wildcard team. It's about time. Hit that thumbs up on the stream. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Bottom right-hand corner if you're new here. If you're watching on X, come over to the YouTube channel. Don't be shy. You can go ahead and prop in your comments in the YouTube chat, and you can hit that thumbs up. Follow me over on X and Instagram at CPNYSports. Usually I'm live tweeting the games anyways, so if you want instant reactions, even before the post game goes through and goes live, follow me there. And please subscribe to the Mets Weekly Podcast on YouTube. Carson, I'm going to let you do a little bit promo here. I hear you have an episode coming out. Tell the people what you're doing on your next episode on the Mets Weekly Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we've got our series recap that we do it now after every single series. We do this live now. We answer some questions in the chat along with it. And, we're probably going to be talking a lot about Mark Vientos, what he's been providing so far, the growth of what we have seen from him. And we're obviously going to put a big spotlight on Adam Ottavino because there is a conversation that has to be had about him. Obviously going over the latest rumors and stuff like that, all that crazy stuff of what's been going on the last 3 days. And it's going to be, I believe, tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Maybe 5 o'clock. I'm not sure. Gotta sort that out. But overall, we do our, Frank does his post games on our TikTok and our Twitter. I actually have to go chop that up right now. Pretty much just twice a week we're live and other content coming soon.
Subscribe to the Mets Weekly Podcast. Catch the post games by Frank. Catch the weekly podcast that's going live tomorrow. This is a great Mets win. This is a great Mets series sweep. This is a great Mets offense. The pitching will come along. They've been weathering the storm. More offense is yet to come. The Mets are approaching an off day. We'll see what sort of transactions transpire tomorrow. Keep an eye out on this YouTube channel as well. Hit that notifications. Hit the subscribe button. We will be talking about some Mets off-day baseball tomorrow, presumably. But if we don't, in any case, scheduling is scheduling. We'll be back on Friday. Let's go, Mets. There's nothing more than I love than a Subway Series sweep and beating the Yankees twice at home at Citi Field. Send those Yankees fans packing back to the Bronx. Let's go, Mets. Carson, I appreciate you. We'll catch y'all the next time. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Peace, y'all. Let's go, Mets.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.